Hey, remember the feature I showed you where if there were more things than would fit on the screen, we could scroll automatically? Let's try that. Let me sign in so these aren't all coming from the same dude. So we'll do the very different dude, Dave Struce. I like Scrum too. I use Pivotal Tracker. Oh yeah, I don't know the password for that guy. All these others have the same dang avatar. Oh, do we only do that in the afternoon? We're not using the avatars here. We're still using adorable avatars. Okay, we'll fix that too. I work in the enterprise. So I use Jira. Pivotal Tracker is for startups and open source nerds. All right, let's see about this scrolly business. Our list of messages, that's a message list, right? So what if we had some element that were right after all of our messages? I'll just call it, let's give it a class name of end. And we could use something called a ref so that we have some way to get to that element. Let me see if I can find the relevant page in the React docs, reactjs.org. Let's search the docs for ref. Refs. React supports a special attribute that you can attach to any component. The ref attribute can be an object created by a React.createRef function or a callback function or a string. When the ref attribute is a callback function, the function receives the underlying DOM element or class instance, depending on the type of element, as its argument. This allows you to have direct access to the DOM element or component instance. Use refs sparingly. If you find yourself often using refs to make things happen in your app, consider getting more familiar with the top-down data flow. In other words, this is sort of, if you really, really need a DOM element, you can do this. But generally, there's probably a more React-y way to do it. But to scroll the page, there's really not. So we'll do this. So what it's saying is we can add the ref prop to this and set its value to a function, a callback, right? And it says the function receives the underlying DOM element or class instance as its argument. So the argument to this arrow function is going to be the element itself, this div, and then we can do something with that. And then typically what you do is you just put it on state somewhere. So message list is not yet a class, so we'll make it one. So we'll import React and component. I'll say class message list extends component. I had these two props, so I will just inside my render method, which I'm getting ready to make, render. All of this is now my render method. Inside my render method, I will say, const these two things equal this dot props. There we go. Now it should at least work like it did before. Nope, because I haven't finished writing this yet. Okay, so the idea here is let's make state. And in there I'll have messages end that starts as null. And then my ref callback here will call this or set. No, never mind. We don't need state. We don't need state. I'll just set a property on the object. So this dot messages end equals L. Sure. Then I could have a method that we'll call scroll to bottom. Scroll to bottom. And this dot messages end will now be that element. And I'm going to call scroll into view, which is a DOM method. That takes some options like behavior smooth. Let's see about that. Let's make sure we're not scrolled down. Let's find our component. That was message list. So now that's $R. So I could call $R dot scroll into scroll to bottom. Yeah. Let's see what happens. Ready? Woo! All right, cool. So we want to do that whenever a new message arrives. When a new message arrives, what's going to happen? We're going to get new props, right? Because that syncs up at the chat component. So message list is going to get new props every time we get a new message. So let's do component did update. And component did update receives as its arguments things like previous props, also previous state, but we're not using that. So I will, before I decide to scroll, I'll at least check if previous props dot messages dot length is less than this dot props dot messages dot length. In other words, make sure I have more messages now than I did. And if that's the case, we'll call this dot scroll to bottom. That'll even work the first time. We don't need a component did mount, because when it first mounts, we won't have synced with Firebase yet. So that should be fine. There we go. Did it right on the page load. Refresh the page. Zoop. Yep. Switch out of that room. Switch back to that room. I should change the props, right? Zoop. Yep. Totally works. Now here's where it gets really cool. Let's open a new window. Let's go to localhost 3000. Let's go to the same room. Well, I use Trello. Ready? Ready? Zoop. Yeah, it zoops in the other window too. Pretty nice. Scroll when new messages are received. And it seems like a moment ago I thought of something else that we didn't do earlier that we should have when we added one of these other features. The avatar, right, thank you.